Chapter 61 The Mysterious Black Egg. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 61 The Mysterious Black Egg. The gigantic black rock that was in front of Mu Chen was approximately dozens of zhang. 1.it is a Chinese measure of length which is approximately 3.3 m tall. There were shattered holes on it, yet it was particularly smooth as if was eroded by magma before. Mu Chen's palms lightly touched the gigantic black rock. He could feel the ancient copper piece within his palms becoming abnormally hot. Could the nine netherbird be inside? An idea flashed through Mu Chen's mind and his eyes twinkled. Then, he looked at Lu Mubai, who was on the other side, and clenched his fist. A dark black spiritual energy surged through his palms and the limitless death seal emerged on the surface of his fist. Boom! Mu Chen drew his arm back towards him before blasting out a fierce punch. The sounds of the winds breaking broke out from the short distance. It smashed heavily onto the gigantic black rock as the arm was wrapped by spiritual energy. Bang! Mu Chen's fist landed on the gigantic black rock and a deep sound rang out. The giant rock shuddered for a bit. Then, Mu Chen was able to see cracks quietly spreading out from behind the fist. Crack! Pieces of rubble continued to fall down endlessly from the gigantic rock. The speed of how fast the cracks spread accelerated and it soon filled the enormous rock. Seeing this scene, Mu Chen took a step backwards carefully. After that punch, he had already discovered that the inside of the rock was hollow. The gigantic rock continued to tremble and pieces of rubble constantly fell down. Just when Mu Chen was staring at it, his eyes narrowed. This is because he saw a black light emitting out from the cracks of the gigantic rock. The commotion over here also attracted Lu Mubai's attention. He also stared in surprise at the trembling rock and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Black lights shot out from the cracks in the rock. A wave of fluctuation spread out and the gigantic rock exploded open after a banging sound. The rubble shot out and a few crossed through Mu Chen's body. However, he remained motionless and stared at the location where the rubble shot out from. At that location, the gigantic black rock had already erupted and a dark black light quietly appeared as it floated in the bottom of the crater. As the light floated in the air, a 1 zhang tall black egg seemed to be inside the light. The black egg was smooth and completely black. On the surface of the egg's shell, there were a couple of exceptionally obscure and mysterious engravings on it. The engraving seemed to be a mysterious black bird spreading its wings out and it protected the egg. This is. Mu Chen's eyes twinkled when he saw the shining black egg. He hesitated for a moment and joy filled his eyes. From the image within the copper piece, the nine netherbirds seemed to have turned into a black egg and landed here in the end. Could it be the one in front of him? When Mu Chen saw the black egg, Lu Mubai was also aware of it. Greed instantly gushed out from his eyes and he charged straight for the black egg. Seeing this, Mu Chen's eyes flashed. However, he did not recklessly rush over. He did not believe that it would be that easy to obtain the nine netherbird. Lu Mubai quickly approached the black egg. But just when he was about to enter a couple of zhang distance away from the black egg, a black light blasted out from the surface of the egg. Bang! The black light fiercely bombarded Lu Mubai's body. His originally moving body was shot backwards and he landed heavily on the ground. He could not help but spit out fresh blood. Fizz! After the black egg caused Lu Mubai to fly backwards, it seems to be activated and a black light wrapped around its surroundings. Then, it slowly flew up to the sky above the crater. Seeing this, Mu Chen hurriedly rushed out of the crater and appeared on the peak of the volcano. Fizz! The black egg finally suspended itself on the sky above the crater. Black lights emitted out and caused the spiritual energy within the world to become violent. This commotion soon attracted everybody's attention. Mu Feng and Lu Qingtian both retreated backwards and stared bewilderedly at the mysterious black egg that appeared. Dad, the black egg is formed by the nine netherbird. Hurry and take it away. Lu Mubai also helplessly followed him above and let out a cry. The Nine Netherbird. Lu Qingtian's eyes narrowed and ecstasy flowed out from within his heart. His body turned into a blurry figure as he charged like a lightning towards the mysterious black egg above the crater. Seeing this, Mu Feng did not want to fall behind and immediately followed. The two of them were extremely fast and charged to the crater in an instant. They both extended their palms and wanted to capture the mysterious black egg. Dad, don't. Mu Chen's eyes remained fixed on the mysterious black egg. However, he suddenly remembered the skeleton that he met within the Black Eerie Swamp. His heart was suddenly filled with anxiety and he immediately shouted out. Mu Feng, who was about to seize the mysterious black egg, heard this cry and was slightly surprised. His eyes twinkled and he gritted his teeth. Then, he actually forced himself to stop his body from moving. Although this was a rare opportunity, he still suppressed the impulse he had within his heart because of the trust he had for Mu Chen. On the other hand, Lu Qingtian let out a sneer when Mu Feng stopped and touched the mysterious egg with a finger. Just when he was able to take it for himself, his face suddenly changed. Fizz. A strange sound came out from the mysterious black egg. Lu Qingtian's finger, which touched the mysterious black egg, actually quickly became charred and an enormous pain emitted out from his finger. This sudden change of events made Lu Qingtian's expression change. He struggled frantically, but found that his finger was stuck to the black egg as if it was glued on. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to get rid of it. Moreover, what made him terrified was that the spiritual energy within his body actually quickly flowed into the black egg through his finger. Damn it! Lu Qingtian let out an angry howl and his eyes turned ruthless. He raised his blade and actually cut off the finger that was in direct contact with the mysterious black egg. The finger dropped down and blood spattered out. Lu Qingtian endured the pain from it and desperately retreated backwards. All these events happened in an instant. Mu Feng was the closest and he clearly saw the scene. He immediately trembled as he stared at the mysterious egg. This item wasn't a weakling. It was fortunate that he was stopped by Mu Chen earlier. Otherwise, he would probably pay an even greater price. Big brother. Seeing the desperately retreating Lu Qingtian, Lu Zong and the others hurried over towards him. Their eyes twitched when they saw that Lu Qingtian's finger was chopped off. Be careful, this damn thing is a bit strange. Lu Qingtian hurriedly circulated his spiritual energy, stopped the blood at his chopped off finger and said with a grim expression. Lu Zong and the others nodded. It seems that it wasn't that easy to obtain the Nine Netherbird. Mu Feng also landed at this moment and reunited with the Mu territory's men. He patted Mu Chen's shoulder and said with a bitter smile. It's lucky you warned me quickly. Mu Chen's eyes turned serious. His eyes remained fixed at the mysterious black egg above the crater. Then, he said softly. Dad, be careful. I feel that something is wrong. Mu Feng also nodded his head. The Nine Netherbird wasn't any ordinary spiritual beast. It was a super existence that was ranked 11 on the Beast Records Earth ranking. Compared to the Nine Netherbird, his Dragonfire bird was worth nothing. The atmosphere suddenly became strange. The two groups of men that were originally fighting in a life and death battle while refusing to let the other get the slightest lead suddenly did not dare to act. They only stared vigilantly and greedily at the mysterious black egg. A breeze blew in from afar and relaxed the tensed atmosphere slightly. Mu Chen's eyes were also fixed at the mysterious black egg. However, his eyes suddenly turned cold. This is because he discovered that the mysterious engravings on the mysterious black egg suddenly began to light up. A strange fluctuation was quietly born from within and emitted outwards. Chapter 62 Unusual Change. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 62 Unusual Change. Fizz. The mysterious black egg floated above the crater of the black volcano. At this moment, a couple of the obscure light engravings gradually lit up on the surface of the black egg. As these light engravings emerged, everybody was able to feel that the spiritual energy within the world suddenly became extremely violent. Mu Feng and the others all looked solemnly at this scene. He could feel the restless movements of the spiritual energy within the world. A hint of unease surged through his eyes. This situation was slightly beyond his expectation. From the image brought up by the copper piece, the 9 Netherbird should have been in an extremely weak state after failing its evolution. However, from the way the mysterious egg made Lu Qingtian cut his finger off, it seems that this item was not something they could just grab as they thought. Be careful. Mu Feng said in a low voice. If the situation seems off, we will immediately retreat. We'll give up on taking the 9 Netherbird. Zhou Yi and the others were slightly taken aback when they heard this. However, seeing Mu Feng's serious expression, they nodded their heads. It was apparent that they noticed that something was off. Mu Chen's gaze was also fixed tightly at the mysterious black egg in the sky. The 9 Netherbird was too powerful. Although they did not know what level the 9 Netherbird had reached before it failed its evolution, it definitely far surpassed the strength of a spirit stage. And the 9 Netherbird which possessed this strength would probably be something that nobody could subdue even if it only possessed a couple of % of its power from before. Not that far away, the Lu territory's men also stared at the mysterious black egg above the sky of the volcano as if they met a great enemy. Lu Qingtian's face turned extremely grim. On the other hand, Lu Mubai's face was turning red and blue alternately. If it wasn't for his words earlier, Lu Qingtian probably wouldn't have frantically snatched it. Moreover, in the critical moment, Mu Chen decided to shout something completely different than him and saved Mu Feng. After comparing their actions, his handsome face reddened and was filled with hatred. Big brother, are you alright? Lu Zong and Lu Ming stared at where Lu Qingtian's finger was cut off and asked with concern. If anything was to happen to Lu Qingtian, it would be a severe blow for the Lu territory. Lu Qingtian shook his head with a grim expression. His eyes remained fixed at the sky and did not blink at all. All of you should stare at it. I don't want to return empty-handed this time. Lu Qingtian said in a gloomy voice. When the Lu territory's men heard this, their hearts jumped and they hurriedly nodded. Under the intense gaze from both groups, the mysterious black egg's light engravings gradually brightened up in the sky. Moreover, it followed a sense of rhythm. It would light up and darken as if it was breathing. Fizz. As the light engravings brightened up, the mysterious black egg suddenly trembled. Then under the surprised gazes of everyone, black light erupted out from the black egg. The sky instantly turned dark at this moment. It seemed to have caused the day to turn into night. This change made everybody's faces change. Cry. Just when the darkness enshrouded the location, a clear cry resounded out in the world. This clear cry seemed to have turned into a sound wave and spread outwards before it vanished at the end of their visions. Mu Chen stared at the black light that enshrouded the sky. He suddenly jumped and a hint of unease appeared. Something's wrong. Mu Feng's face suddenly changed. He gripped his fist tightly and let out a horrified expression. The spiritual energy within our body are rapidly disappearing. After he said this, Zhou Yi and the others' expression changed. They hurriedly inspected their body. As expected, the spiritual energy within their body was vanishing abnormally. It was as if something was sucking away the spiritual energy within their bodies forcibly. After hearing Mu Feng's cry, Mu Chen's heart jumped. He was only at the spiritual movement stage late phase, so he was not that sensitive to the feeling of losing spiritual energy. Instead, Mu Feng and the others with their spirit stage would sense it the most. It's because of the black egg. Mu Chen said in a low voice. At this moment, the mysterious black egg was the only thing that could explain this strange scene. Not far away, the Lu territory's men also entered in a commotion and sounds of exclamation rang out endlessly. It was evident that they detected this strange situation. Territory Lord, what should we do? Duan Wei urgently asked. If this continues, the spiritual energy within their bodies would completely be exhausted. How would they leave the Black Yiri swamp then? Mu Feng's eyes changed rapidly and he gritted his teeth. Leave, we're retreating. This situation here was too strange. Mu Feng understood that the trip this time was too recklessly. Just what sort of existence is the Nine Netherbird? Even if it failed to evolve and was in an extremely weak state, how was it possible for them to easily get a bargain with their strength? At this moment, there was no use being greedy anymore. No matter how precious the treasure was, it would be useless if they could not protect their lives. Therefore, Mu Feng decisively acted and led the others away. Bang! However, just when Mu Feng let out the order for retreat, the ground seemed to tremble like an earthquake. Territory Lord, look quickly. A voice filled with horror suddenly rang out. Mu Feng, Mu Chen and the others hastily looked up and stared behind them. They saw various lights emerged from within the Black Yiri swamp. The lights were all powerful spiritual beasts. In the lead, there were at least a dozen of high-rank spiritual beasts. These spiritual beasts were rushing over crazily towards this direction. The scene of dozen of beasts rushing over made Duan Wei and the others turn pale. Mu Chen could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. What is this situation? Could it be that all the spiritual beasts within the Black Yiri swamp would rush over? Hurry and dodge. Mu Feng's eyes twitched. He suppressed the horror within his heart and led them to a cliff. Against such amounts of beasts rushing over, even a spirit stage powerhouse would have to hide. When Mu Feng and the others hurriedly gave way to the beasts, the Lu territory also discovered this scene. Many of the men felt powerless in their legs. This formation was definitely too terrifying. Lu Qingtian was also shocked as well. Luckily, he did not lose his cool and brought his men away. They did not dare to appear in front of the beasts rushing over. The two groups were separated by some distance and did not dare to make a sound. They carefully crouched down and stared at the group of spiritual beasts charging over from a distance. Mu Chen fixed his gaze on the spiritual beasts as they charged over. His eyes instantly became serious and he noticed that signs of madness appeared in the spiritual beasts' eyes. It seems that something mysterious had caused them to turn berserk. Mu Chen frowned and finally thought back to the spirit bug user's skeleton. He became even more alert to the Nine Netherbird that he never met. It seems that it was not simple at all. The herd of beasts brought a trail of smoke and charged into the black basin. The dense bones that existed there earlier were squashed under their foot. However, they ignored it and charged in the direction of the mysterious egg above the crater. Mu Chen stared at the herd of beasts and watched as they charged into the basin towards the mysterious black egg. Then, his eye narrowed when he witnessed the black bird light engraving on the mysterious black egg gently fluttering its wings as if it resurrected itself. The originally dark sky turned even darker again. Cry. Another clear cry emitted out like a black sound wave again. This sound wave was as gentle as the flow of water and it spread over towards the berserk herd of beasts galloping over. The heaven and earth seemed to have become completely silent at this moment. Mu Chen fiercely sucked in a breath of air. A hint of astonishment surged out from his black eyes. This was because he saw the spiritual beasts instantly freeze when they were affected by the black sound wave, whether it was a high-rank spiritual beast or low-rank spiritual beast. Then, their flesh would be stripped apart and revealed dense bones in the form of running over as it stood within the basin. Mu Chen exchanged glances with Mu Feng. They both saw the shock within each other's eyes. Afterwards, they thought about the white bones that they saw earlier. So the white bones appeared like this. In other words, it wasn't the first time that this situation occurred. Chapter 63 Divine Black Thundercloud. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 63 divine black thundercloud. The black sound wave gently rippled and emitted outwards from the black basin. As the black sound wave passed through, all the spiritual beasts would instantly turn into dense bones. Not even a single trace of blood existed on the white bones. Mu Chen and the others stared at this scene, stunned. Then, they shivered as this scene was too abnormal. Swish! A dense light would surge out from the spiritual beasts that turned into bones and form a light rainbow as it surged through the sky towards the mysterious black egg above the crater. Fizz! And while facing the dense light rainbow filled with spiritual energy, the mysterious black egg also released a black light. Then, it sucked in all of the light rainbows like a bottomless pit. Light rainbows endlessly rise up from within the spiritual beasts' bodies. Under that brilliance, they devoted their lives. Furthermore, the most horrifying thing was that the spiritual beasts would watch this terrifying scene occur without any panic. A hint of craziness was within their scarlet eyes. It was as if they were flies flying into a fire, yet they seemed to feel glory in their actions. This strange contrast made Mu Chen shiver. Then, he stared at the mysterious black egg that was endlessly sucking in the light rainbows within the sky. This method had far surpassed the intelligence of all the spiritual beasts that Mu Chen had seen before. It was even more cruel and cunning than a human. That black egg is probably formed by the 9 Netherbird. Mu Feng's face became serious as he stared in fear at the black egg absorbing many rainbows in the sky. The spiritual beasts in the Black Yuri swamp seemed to be providing an enormous amount of spiritual energy to the 9 Netherbird. Mu Chen softly spoke. Mu Feng also nodded and said. Moreover, it's not the first time that a scene similar to this has occurred. Over these years, the numerous spiritual beasts in the Black Yuri swamp had turned into white bones and devoted all their spiritual energy to the 9 Netherbird. The spiritual beasts in the Black Yuri swamp. Mu Feng's face turned strange as he said. It seems that it was raised by the 9 Netherbird. It will let them grow and fatten up before the 9 Netherbird slaughters it to extract their spiritual energy. On the side, Duan Wei and the others all shuddered when they heard this. If it was done by a human, they wouldn't be too surprised. However, this scenario was planned by a spiritual beast that was considerably powerful. And, perhaps the copper piece that we obtained was also its intention. It used that to lure a few greedy humans over to absorb the spiritual energy away from our bodies. Mu Feng said with a bitter smile and said. This time, it might not think highly about us. Otherwise, I feel that we would end up no better than the spiritual beasts. Zhou Ye's face turned pale. If this was all planned out by the 9 Netherbird, then it would be too terrifying. Mu Chen also sighed. He knew that what his father said was mostly true. There were probably many humans that came to this place like the skeleton he met in the Black Yuri swamp due to greed over the past years. However, the skeleton was slightly luckier as he managed to escape. Yet, he still died due to his injuries being too severe. Then what should we do now? Duan Wei and the others wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. It was still the first time for them meeting such a terrifying spiritual beast. The terror didn't just come from its strength, but also from how it was cunning and ruthless like a human. Retreat. There wasn't the slightest hesitation in Mu Feng's voice. Don't even think about the 9 Netherbird. Nobody in the northern spiritual realm will be able to capture this existence. We should immediately retreat while its attention is focused on the spiritual beasts. Yes. Duan Wei and the others let out a sigh of relief when they heard this. They could not see any hope in this bizarre situation. It would be a wise decision for them to leave as soon as possible. Mu Feng seemed to have made up his mind on giving up on the 9 Netherbird. After he issued out the order, he waved his hand. A group of men quietly climbed up the cliff and cautiously headed out of the Black Basin. Big brother, the people from the Mu territory are retreating. The Lu territory was aware of the movement caused by the Mu territory and Lu Ming shouted out quickly. Forget about them. Lu Qingtian said coldly. Something is wrong with the current situation. We would feel safer if they leave since we wouldn't have to remain alert against them. Then, Lu Ming hesitated for a moment. In fact, he was also terribly afraid when he witnessed the scene in front of him. The mysterious black egg was too bizarre and his instincts told him that it would be smarter for him to get as far away as possible. Just wait a little longer. Signs of struggling could be seen within Lu Qingtian's eyes. However, he still gritted his teeth and said these words. The temptation of the 9 Netherbird was too great. If he was able to obtain it, even if the possibility was extremely small, he would instantly become the lord of the northern spiritual realm. Lu Ming and Lu Zong exchanged gazes with each other and nodded. They had prepared a long time for this plan. If they were to leave now, they wouldn't be willing to accept it. Just when the Mu territory was quietly retreating and the Lu territory was remaining there without giving up, thousands of spiritual beasts in the Black Basin turned into bones from the black sound wave. Who? The numerous light rainbows in the sky whistled out and eventually all of them were sucked into the mysterious black egg. When the final light rainbow was sucked in, the world seemed to have become unusually quiet. Crack. During this silence, a sudden cracking sound rang out. It was not loud, but the Lu territory and the Mu territory seemed to have been shocked by lightning. Then, all their eyes fixed itself onto the mysterious black egg in fear. They could see that subtle cracks actually emerged on the surface of the black egg. As the cracks emerged, black flames surged out and wrapped the mysterious black egg completely. When the bizarre black flame rushed out, the spiritual aura in the world seemed to show signs of boiling. This is. Cold sweat seemed to drip down Mu Feng's face slowly. His voice became hoarse as he said. The 9 Netherbird seems to be coming out. Li. Just when he finished saying those words, a cry rang out in the world from the mysterious black egg. A black flame instantly enveloped the sky like a storm. The cracks on the surface of the black light egg were becoming increasingly concentrated. Then with a final crisping sound, it burst open. As the black flames became increasingly violent, Mu Chen and the others were somewhat shocked to see a pair of black wings that could cover a mountain stretching out from within the flames. The black flames continued to scorch the sky. Mu Chen and the others could vaguely see a huge shadow within the monstrous flames. It was elegantly stretching its large body as if it was resurrecting from nirvana like a phoenix rebirthing from flames. A horrifying spiritual energy pressure also emitted out at this moment. It caused the spiritual aura within the world to boil. Is this the 9 Netherbird? Mu Chen watched in shock at the massive creature stretching its body elegantly in the monstrous black flames. Although he was not able to see its appearance clearly, the somewhat vague outline already feels amazing. This fluctuation. Mu Feng kept a close eye at the vague outline and immediately gulped. This spiritual energy pressure probably wasn't something that a 3 Heavens stage powerhouse could compare with. They actually had a wishful thinking of capturing this sort of existence. It was truly ridiculous. Hurry and run. Mu Feng took a deep breath and gathered all the drool he had within his heart. He let out a cry and prepared to retreat no matter what. Rumble. However, just when Mu Feng urged his people to retreat, thunder sounds rang out in the sky. They looked up and suddenly froze. A black thundercloud abruptly gathered above the black flames in the sky. Moreover, they could faintly feel that there was a black lightning dragon quietly surging within the thundercloud. A destructive energy emitted out from the black thundercloud. This is the divine black thundercloud. Mu Feng stared at the black thundercloud and his eyes instantly narrowed. He could not help saying these words out as he suppressed the horror within his voice. Divine black thundercloud. Mu Chen was stunned. Mu Feng took a deep breath and suppressed the shock within his heart as he muttered. The 9 Netherbird actually hasn't given up yet. It is still attempting to evolve. Chapter 64 Evolution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 64 Evolution, Evolve. Mu Chen and the others were stunned. They stared at the massive shadow within the black flames which covered the sky. Then, he said. Didn't it fail before? That's why it would like to try again. Signs of surprise could be seen within Mu Feng's eyes as he said. It seems that this Nine Netherbird is extremely prideful. It had to use many schemes in order to resurrect after failing the evolution last time. Who would have thought that it would attempt to evolve again when it had just reappeared? Mu Chen was also surprised at the courage that this Nine Netherbird had. If one was ordinary, he would unconsciously avoid doing whatever he had failed at doing. However, this Nine Netherbird wanted to climb back up from where it had fallen. This courage, this pride, it amazed everyone. Will it succeed? Mu Chen asked in a low voice. He lifted his head to stare at the sky filled with black thunderclouds. Within the thunderclouds, the black lightning seemed to creep around like a massive black dragon as it released an indescribable power. Who knows, the Nine Netherbird is originally an extremely powerful existence. It possesses the 11th rank on the Myriad Beast Records Earth ranking. Moreover, if it successfully evolves, it would have the qualifications to charge at the Myriad Beast Records Heaven ranking. At that time that it will truly become a divine beast. Mu Feng said. Divine beast. Mu Chen could not help but bite his lips. This simple phrase gave off an unparalleled pressure. This is because each and every one of the divine beasts were super-existences within the great thousand worlds. Even sovereign-class existences would be afraid of these overlords belonging to different species. However, the divine black lightning isn't that easy to overcome. Mu Feng also said gently as he stared at the enormous shadow within the black flames in the sky. In the world are many spiritual beasts, but just how many of them would be able to evolve into these super existences? A spiritual beast and a divine beast may only be different by one word, yet there is an unsurpassable gap between them. It has already failed once before. Normally speaking, once one fails to overcome the lightning, the one who was attempting would be annihilated by the lightning. However, this Nine Netherbird seems to have escaped with its life before. If it fails again this time, it might not be that lucky. Mu Feng's pace of retreating gradually slowed down. If the Nine Netherbird is going to attempt to overcome the lightning, then they would be safe. This is because they were just like ants in the Nine Netherbirds' eyes. They simply weren't worthy enough for it to pay attention to them. Mu Chen felt a bit of regret when he heard these words. If the Nine Netherbird was to vanish due to the lightning, nobody would be able to obtain its spiritual beast soul essence. This way, the Mu territory would not have gotten any harvest for coming here. However, who would have the ability to ingest the Nine Netherbird soul essence even if they obtained it? Mu Feng was extremely lucky back then when he ingested the Dragonfire bird. Not to mention the Nine Netherbird, who was even more powerful than the Dragonfire bird. While Mu Chen and the others stared at the sky with regret and admiration, a clear cry resounded throughout the world from within the black flames in the sky. Moreover, it was possible to hear a deep unyielding fighting spirit from within the cry. It was issuing a challenge towards the divine black lightning. Boom! The divine black thundercloud seemed to have noticed the Nine Netherbirds' provocation and immediately let out a deep rumbling sound, which echoed throughout the region. Under the rumbling sound, Mu Chen and the others could feel the spiritual aura within the world trembling, as if it was fearful of that terrifying heavenly might. Li! A clear cry rang out once again. The Nine Netherbirds' wings stretched out from within the black flames and suddenly black flames surged out all over the place. It turned into numerous black flame pillars and fiercely charged at the black thundercloud. The Nine Netherbird actually dared to take the initiative to launch an attack at the divine black lightning. Boom! The black thundercloud quietly surged and a black lightning started winding and swirling. The black lightning dragon stared coldly at the black flame pillars charging over. Then, a black lightning filled with destructive power immediately rushed down. Bang bang bang. The black lightning and black flames collided fiercely. The entire world seemed to have exploded at that moment. Then, the loud rumbling sound made the earth tremble violently and cracks spread out from the black basin. Mu Chen and the others stared in shock at the terrifying battle in the sky. At that location, the black flames and black lightning were wreaking havoc crazily. It was evident that the black lightning is an extremely terrifying thing. The lightning descended down as if it was attempting to destroy everything in the world and shattered countless black flame pillars. After the black lightning shattered the countless black flame pillars, it used a terrifying momentum to fiercely descend down into the black flames within the sky. In the end, it descended down onto the massive creature hidden within the black flames. Li. Within the cry this time, pain could be heard. But following this, anger emerged in the cry again. The nine netherbird flapped its wings and the black flame sea furiously whirled together. Then, it finally turned into several interconnected black flame storms. Buzz. The earth began to shatter due to the rotation of the black flame storms. Luckily, the nine netherbirds' primary target was the divine black lightning. Thus, the black flame storms whirled over towards the divine black thundercloud once it was formed. Facing against the nine netherbirds' crazy attack, the divine black thundercloud also quickly moved. A dark lightning vortex appeared at the center of the thundercloud and numerous black lightnings gathered inside the vortex. Boom! Within the vortex, numerous black lightnings gathered together and eventually formed into a massive lightning pillar. It fired out and bombarded the black flame storms in a direct confrontation. Swoosh! The black lightning pillar was like the thunder god's punishment and forcibly tore apart the black flame storms. The entire world seemed to have become dim in that moment. The black flame storms that were formed by the nine netherbirds' full strength were stopped once again and the nine netherbird issued out an extremely furious cry again. This damn lightning had already stopped it once. Could it again be planning to prevent it from evolving? Its prideful self would never be willing to admit defeat. The black flames within the sky suddenly shrank abnormally. It was as if all the black flames wormed itself into the nine netherbirds' body. As the black flames shrank, the nine netherbirds' body finally entered everybody's view. It was a massive creature approximately the size of 10,000 zhang and its wings were able to cover a mountain when it was spread open. On its body, mysterious black feathers had a hint of black flames surging through them. On its tail, long tail feathers extended out elegantly and clusters of black flames slowly burned at the tip. Although the nine netherbird was extremely massive, it did not have a shred of fat. Its curved body made it seem extremely elegant, slim, mysterious, and beautiful. It truly was a fascinating creature. However, the nine netherbirds' eyes were showing a fiery red color at that moment. Unacceptance and rage were filled within its eyes as it stared at the entrenched thundercloud in the sky. Then, it flapped its wings and furious winds suddenly appeared in the world. The black flames covered its wings and the nine netherbird itself turned into a black flame as it flew up high. In the end, it mustered all its power and rushed straight towards the black thundercloud. It was going to do a final showdown against the divine black thundercloud. Mu Chen stared at the flapping wings as it charged without fear into the black thundercloud, which even the nine netherbird felt horror from, like a moth to a flame. His heart was filled with shock. The nine netherbirds' unyielding and stubborn personality made a spectator like him feel amazed. However, when this amazement rose up, a sense of regret also emerged. This is because Mu Chen saw the divine black thundercloud contracting intensely and all the lightning within it seemed to have gathered together at this moment. This blow would definitely shock the heavens and earth. Boom! At that moment, the world became silent. Only the sound of thunder resounded out. Then, a black lightning dragon, which was almost the same size as the nine netherbird, pierced through the skies and landed furiously on the approaching nine netherbirds' body. Chapter 65 Self-Destruct. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 65 Self-Destruct. The black lightning descended down from the sky above. The indescribable thunder sound emitted almost spread throughout the entire Black Eyrie swamp. The spiritual beasts within the Black Eyrie swamp also issued out fearful roars as they laid on the ground shivering. They did not dare to make even a slightest movement. Everybody at the scene had shocked expressions as they watched the events happening in the sky. Even Mu Feng and Lu Qingtian, who were the strongest individuals within the northern spiritual realm, were completely horrified. This power was too terrifying. If it landed on them, even their remains wouldn't exist. As the raging lightning descended down, a mournful cry filled with despair and resignation rang out. The Nine Netherbird is going to fail. When Mu Chen heard this clear cry, his heart jumped. So the divine black lightning calamity was this powerful. Even such a mighty existence like the Nine Netherbird couldn't endure it. In the sky, the berserk black lightning was almost suppressing the black flames completely. No matter how much the Nine Netherbird struggled, it was unable to move forward. The black flames were finally pushed back completely and helplessness appeared in its cry. It never imagined that it would fail again after its first failure. The black lightning filled with destructive energy had already oppressed the Nine Netherbirds' true body. Afterwards, a loud cry rang out from the Nine Netherbird again. At this moment, the mysterious black feathers on its massive body began to burn up. As the black flames raged out, the temperature in the world also began to increase significantly. Hurry and retreat, the Nine Netherbird is crazy. It's going to self-destruct. Seeing the black flames ignite on the Nine Netherbird, Mu Feng's face changed and he immediately shouted out. He instantly grabbed onto Mu Chen and darted away from the black basin, like an arrow. Behind him, Zhou Yi, Duan Wei and the others also had ghastly expressions as they hurriedly followed. Just how terrifying would the Nine Netherbird self-destruction be? In the distance, the Lu territory's men also noticed this situation and their faces immediately turned pale. They frantically fled away towards the opposite direction. At this instant, they completely gave up on the idea of capturing the Nine Netherbird. As the two groups of men rushed away recklessly, the black flames within the Nine Netherbird turned increasingly violent in the sky. It flapped its large wings and then its massive body exploded at this moment. The black flames gushed out and even forcibly destroyed the terrifying black lightning. Even the black thundercloud in the sky was ripped apart by the surging black flames. Furthermore, the entire world seemed to have become like a steamer. The boiling temperature made the underneath forest burn up instantly. Bang! Although Mu Feng and the others had already escaped far away from the center of the explosion, the impact emitted out from it still caused the group of men to helplessly fall to the ground. Mu Feng climbed up and took a glance at the sky. His face became increasingly serious. At the location where the Nine Netherbird had self-destructed, an enormous black flame lotus bloomed. The black flames were like black meteorites and showered down onto the earth. It was as if the world was coming to an end. Dong dong. No matter where the black flames landed at, the earth would immediately crack open. Then, the cracks would quickly spread. This black basin had instantly turned into shambles. Hurry! Mu Feng said in a deep voice. They could not afford to stay in this place anymore. If they were unlucky and were hit by a meteorite-like flame, then it would be bad news. Swoosh! However, just when Mu Feng had shouted out, he could hear the burning sounds of winds breaking. He quickly lifted his head and his face changed drastically. The black flames that flew across the sky seemed to be shooting at them. Mu Feng stared as the black flames quickly became larger within his eyes. His face was also pale. At this moment it was already too late to escape. He hurriedly exchanged glances with Zhou Yi and took a step forward. Then with a violent cry, dense spiritual energy poured out from their bodies and formed a thick spiritual energy light barrier that protected the people behind it. Swish. The black flames with a long black tail showered down and bombarded the spiritual energy light barrier. Boom. Mu Chen and the others could feel the earth they were standing on start to crack. The boiling heat caused some minor skin irritations. While the spiritual energy light barrier blocked against the impacts of the black flames, cold sweat was constantly dripping down from Mu Feng and Zhou Yi. The hands that maintained the spiritual energy light barrier were burned so much that they felt bursts of pain. However, the two of them continued to maintain it. They understood that if the people behind them were to be affected by it, they would at least be seriously injured with their strength. Crunch. The spiritual energy light barrier trembled and twisted faintly. As this moment, a crunching sound rang out. Mu Chen and the others who were behind the light barrier hurriedly retreated as if they had met a great enemy. Be careful, we can't block it anymore. The spiritual energy light barrier was becoming more and more distorted. Finally, Mu Feng and Zhou Yi were not able to maintain it, and with a low cry, the spiritual energy light barrier shattered as the two of them were blown back helplessly. The black flames rushed in like a torrent. Although the majority of its strength was cancelled out by Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, the impact still influenced Duan Wei and the others. Their bodies grinded across the land for 100 meters, as if they had suffered a heavy blow, before finally stopping awkwardly. Bang! Mu Chen's body also flew backwards and landed heavily on a giant boulder. His throat instantly had a sweet taste and he could not help but spit out fresh blood. It was as if the bones in his body were collapsing. Isn't this way too powerful? Mu Chen wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth and let out a wry smile. This was only just one of the flames in the sky. If they all were to bombard at them, wouldn't it instantly erase them? The 9 Netherbird self-destruction is truly terrifying. Mu Chen hobbled as he stood up. But just as he was about to call out to Mu Feng and the others, his face instantly changed as he lifted his head. He saw a tiny black flame heading straight towards him. Mu Chen. This sudden turn of events was also noticed by Mu Feng. His face immediately became distorted as he charged towards Mu Chen. With his speed, however, he was not comparable to the black flames that rushed over. So even Mu Feng could only watch as the black flames rapidly enlarged itself in his eyes. How unlucky. There was time only for this thought to cross Mu Chen's mind. Then, he felt a burning feeling and pain instantly filled his mind. Darkness filled his vision and his head dropped down. But the instant before his vision turned dark, he vaguely saw a light flashing within the black flame. Then, he entered the darkness as he suffered a terrible pain. Chapter 66 The Change Within His Body. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 66 The Change Within His Body. Mu Chen's consciousness floated without aim in the darkness. There was not even the slightest trace of light in this place. He was not even aware of time as he drifted around in a comatose state. Although he did not know how long he drifted around, a strange fluctuation emitted out from within the darkness. A strange black flame surged out in the center of the darkness as it condensed itself. As the black flames condensed itself, it actually turned into a giant black bird, which let out a cry towards the sky. Then, it seemed to have noticed Mu Chen's drifting consciousness. With a sharp cry, it turned into a streak of black flames and charged over to his consciousness as it glared fiercely. Ah! Mu Chen issued out a scream from his mouth and his body sat up like a conditioned reflex. His forehead was filled with cold sweat while his eyes were trembling. Little Mu woke up. The little lord is awake. Just when Mu Chen was confused about the scene earlier, delighted voices rang out from the surroundings. Only then did he lifted his head up in daze and realized that he was on top of a stretcher. Zhou Yi, Duan Wei, and the others were all looking at him with a happy expression nearby. Is he awake? Mu Feng's familiar voice rang out in surprise. Then, he hurriedly walked over and let out a sigh of relief when he saw Mu Chen safe and sound. Dad, what is this all about? Mu Chen rubbed his head and asked. You were affected by the flame's impact caused by the 9 Netherbird self-destruction and you've been in a coma up until now. Luckily, it doesn't seem to be a major issue. Mu Feng explained. If anything happened to Mu Chen, he really didn't know how he would face it. Mu Chen was stunned when he heard this. He vaguely remembered that a black flame was charging towards him before he fainted. What about the 9 Netherbird? Did it die? Mu Chen shook his head as he asked. Yes. Mu Feng nodded with a bit of regret. Through the self-destruction, nothing was left behind of the 9 Netherbird. They did not obtain any harvest this time. However, at least the Lu territory also headed back empty-handed. Thus, this could already be considered a success for the Mu territory since the other goal of this trip was to stop the Lu territory. Mu Chen also felt a bit of pity. That was an existence ranked 11 on the Myriad Beast Records Earth ranking. It was not something you could meet easily. He really didn't know just how powerful one would be if they managed to ingest its spiritual beast soul essence. We have already passed through the Black Yuri Swamp and we're currently heading back to the Mu territory. Zhou Yi smiled as he spoke. It was all thanks to Little Mu for the Black Yuri Swamp's trip this time. Otherwise, we would not be able to catch up with the Lu territory and see that terrifying scene. Oh ho ho, yes, there's a successor for the territory lord now. Congratulations. Duan Wei and the others smiled as he spoke. Little Mu had truly impressed them during the Black Yuri Swamp trip. After hearing these words, Mu Feng could not help but be proud. He immediately waved his hand and said. Everybody should increase the alertness level after we head back from this trip. Since the Lu territory came back empty-handed, they would definitely be angry at our Mu territory. Moreover, with their personality, they would not let this go easily. Everybody agreed when they heard this and then they accelerated. Although they have already exited the Black Yuri Swamp, they still felt the chills after seeing the earth-shattering scene earlier. They only wanted to get away from that place as far as possible. While Mu Chen sat on the stretcher, he immediately rubbed his head. Then, he turned around and stared at the Black Yuri Swamp in the distance. He did not know why, but he had a strange feeling that the 9 Netherbird hasn't died yet. 2 days later, Mu Feng and the others returned back to the Mu territory. The dusty group of people felt relieved while they thought back about the dangerous trip they had. They finally managed to return alive. Mu Feng dismissed everybody and allowed them to rest. As for Mu Chen, he hobbled for a while and returned back to his room. He immediately took a big nap. It was evident that he was completely exhausted because of the past few days. When Mu Chen woke up from his deep slumber, it was already evening. He stared blankly at the quiet night before stretching his waist. It's time to train. Mu Chen chuckled and sat cross-legged. He closed his eyes slightly and quickly entered the state of cultivation. The surrounding air trembled around him and tiny traces of spiritual aura from the world were attracted over. Then, it finally entered Mu Chen's body through Mu Chen's breathing. He maintained this state of cultivation for approximately an hour. Then, all of a sudden, he opened his eyes. Within the dark night, his black eyes revealed amazement and hints of joy. This is because he noticed that the spiritual energy within his aura sea had actually reached a state of being completely full. This represents that he had already reached the pinnacle of a spiritual movement stage late phase. It also meant that he could charge at the spiritual rotation stage. It was actually this fast. Mu Chen was delighted. He originally thought that it would take at least another 2 weeks or so. Never did he expect that the Black Yuri Swamp trip would have brought him that much benefit. After a while, Mu Chen gradually suppressed the joy within his heart and clenched his palms as an exquisite jaded box appeared within his hand. Within the jaded box lies a round emerald-shaped elixir. It was the accumulation elixir that he had received as a reward during the Northern Spiritual Field training. This elixir would provide great assistance to the ones charging at the spiritual rotation stage. He had never used it because he was waiting for the best moment to use it. And now, it was time. Mu Chen picked up the emerald dot-like elixir and sniffed the faint fragrance emitted by it. His head immediately cleared up and he no longer hesitated as he threw the accumulation elixir into his mouth. Nom! The accumulation elixir immediately melted and turned into rumbling spiritual energy. It seemed to pour through Mu Chen's body like a flood. Mu Chen quickly closed his eyes as he circulated the great pagoda art. He steadily ingested the dense spiritual energy bit by bit and poured it into his aura sea. With the influx of the large amount of spiritual energy, many changes appeared in his aura sea. The clump of spiritual energy that was like a nebula slowly shrank. While it was shrinking, Mu Chen could feel the spiritual energy within his body becoming purer and fiercer. It requires a lot of spiritual energy for one to charge at the spiritual rotation stage. Luckily, Mu Chen had the accumulation elixir. Therefore, he was about to omit some trouble during this step. He stabilized his mind and slowly ingested the elixir's medical power as he sent it all into his aura sea. Within his aura sea, the originally palm-sized clump of spiritual energy had turned into the size of a chicken egg. However, the edge of the clump had become rounder. Moreover, the black spiritual energy had become increasingly abstruse. The clump of spiritual energy was still compressing itself while Mu Chen continued to send spiritual energy within his aura sea. This process lasted for around 10 minutes before the compression finally stopped. The chicken egg-sized clump of spiritual energy had become the size of a pigeon's egg. Mu Chen could sense the change happening within his aura sea and quietly entered with his mind. He noticed that a pitched black light wheel gradually floated on top of the pigeon egg. The spiritual energy light wheel was many times smaller than the clump earlier. However, Mu Chen could sense how dense the spiritual energy within it was. It had far surpassed the spiritual movement stage late phase. Mu Chen stared at the small and delicate spiritual energy light wheel as joy welled up from his heart. He had finally broken through the spiritual movement stage and advanced into the spiritual rotation stage. Just by this, he had reached the basic acceptance conditions for the 5 great academies. Although he did not feel surprised that he achieved this step, the feeling of becoming stronger was extremely wonderful. Perhaps the guys from the spiritual road had completed the final step and obtained a power far beyond his, but so what? I, Mu Chen, was not inferior to any of you in the spiritual road. And I can do the same in the great thousand world. Mu Chen pursed his lips and a sense of pride and persistence emerged on the boy's handsome face. After he had successfully condensed the spiritual wheel, Mu Chen had completely relaxed. But just when he was about to exit this state, a familiar cry rang out from within his mind. Li. This cry was not loud, but Mu Chen seemed to have been struck by lightning when he heard it. His entire body stiffened as a fizzing sound rang out within his mind. Boom! Just when Mu Chen's mind lost its capability to think when it heard this cry, he discovered a fierce fluctuation appearing from within his body. Then, it directly charged at his mind as if it was trying to devour his consciousness. The soul essence swallowing its owner. This situation stunned Mu Chen as his body instantly turned cold. Then, horror appeared within his eyes. Chapter 67. A page of black paper seals the spirit bird. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 67. A page of black paper seals the spirit bird. This sudden turn of events had completely made Mu Chen's mind enter a state of chaos and horror. His face also turned extremely pale. The soul essence swallowing its owner. Damn it, he had just advanced into the spiritual rotation stage and did not have the strength to even ingest a spiritual beast's soul essence. How could such a thing appear within his body? Mu Chen's mind was completely stunned. However, he was still somewhat calm, so he quickly recovered from the chaos. It was not the time for him to think why this had happened. Instead, he must focus on protecting his life. The soul essence swallowing its owner was something quite common. A few spirit stage powerhouses were quite ambitious and wanted to ingest a powerful spiritual beast's soul essence. However, they did not realize that it was an extremely dangerous act. In order to ingest the spiritual beast's soul essence, you must first wipe out the consciousness of the spiritual beast. They would definitely have to suffer the resistance of the spiritual beast while they perform this act. Some of the fiercer spiritual beasts would even take the opportunity to counterattack and attempt to swallow its owner instead. If this were to happen, it was almost certain that the owner would die. An extremely fierce fluctuation charged straight at Mu Chen's mind and attempted to erase his consciousness. While facing this sort of attack from within his body, Mu Chen did not have many ways to deal with it. He immediately took a deep breath and manipulated the spiritual energy within his body to circulate it through his meridians. Then, he made it crash against each other. Dong. A low and silent sound echoed within Mu Chen's body. This tremor caused his throat to suddenly taste sweet. However, the spiritual energy collision also formed a spiritual energy fluctuation. These fluctuations quickly spread out and collided with the fierce fluctuation that was charging towards Mu Chen's mind. As the two fluctuations collided with each other, Mu Chen felt dizzy again within his mind. However, he bit his tongue tightly and used the pain to keep himself awake. Afterwards, he saw a black flame surging within his body. The black flames drifted around and an elegant black shadow with wings appeared within the flames. It's the Nine Netherbird. Mu Chen saw the black shadow that had left a deep impression on him and his heart immediately trembled. He would never have imagined that the spiritual beast's soul essence that entered his body would be the Nine Netherbird soul essence. It was then. Mu Chen suddenly recalled the instant before he had fallen unconscious in the Black Eerie Swamp. The black flame that charged at him had something hidden within it. Could it be that the Nine Netherbird spiritual beast's soul essence was hidden within it? And that it entered his body through it? Damn it! Mu Chen cursed and did not feel any delight from the fact that the Nine Netherbird soul essence was within his body. He could only feel an irregular heartbeat as it was impossible for him to ingest it with his strength right now. If that's the case, there is only one result. His consciousness would be erased by the Nine Netherbird. Moreover, the vicious and cunning Nine Netherbird might even use a special method to occupy his body to be reborn again. Mu Chen was definitely not happy to see such a scene. Within the black flames, the Nine Netherbird seemed to be aware of Mu Chen's gaze and instantly let out a fierce cry. The black flames turned around and drilled towards Mu Chen's aura. It was smart. It knew that Mu Chen would not be able to stop him once his aura was destroyed. After destroying his spiritual energy, he would become a useless person. What a vicious beast! Mu Chen was shocked by the Nine Netherbird's viciousness. He angrily cursed as he mobilized his spiritual energy and attempted to stop the Nine Netherbird. The Nine Netherbird within the black flames seemed to have noticed the surging spiritual energy. Within its sharp eyes, a hint of contempt flashed. Just what level of an existence is it? Even if it had no body, it was not something which a boy, who had just entered the spiritual rotation stage, could deal with. The black flames instantly turned a lot brighter and it flapped its wings. Then, flames directly charged at the surging spiritual energy. However, Mu Chen could tell that the spiritual energy within his body had completely evaporated away when it collided against the black flames. To the Nine Netherbird, this sort of blockade was simply ineffective against it. On one side, it was a super spiritual beast, whose name was vicious and reputed within the world. On the other side, he was a boy, who was only at the spiritual rotation stage. They simply weren't at the same level. Mu Chen also noticed the gap between the two of them. However, he did not give up because of this. Instead, he gritted his teeth and a hint of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. If you want to cripple me, then I won't let you be better off either. Mu Chen moved his mind and the spiritual energy light wheel that was just formed slowly circulated. The spiritual energy that was stored within it was completely drawn out by him. Then, it charged towards the black flames approaching his Oracy mercilessly. Chi. The black flames continued to head forward, and wherever it passed, the spiritual energy evaporated. Even when Mu Chen did everything to stop the black flames, were they only delayed for a moment. It was evident that it could not stop the 9 Netherbird. Within 10 short breaths, the black flames have already broken through all the spiritual energy barriers that Mu Chen had placed up. Outside of his Oracy, the 9 Netherbirds' eyes seemed to have emerged on the black flames as it revealed a touch of pride. Swish! Under Mu Chen's furious gaze, the black flames moved and entered his Oracy. A burning pain instantly emitted out and caused Mu Chen's face to become distorted. He could see the 9 Netherbird heading towards the spiritual energy light wheel that was just formed after entering his Oracy. It roared and attempted to destroy it. The spiritual energy light wheel embodies all the spiritual energy that Mu Chen had condensed through his life. If it was destroyed, Mu Chen's efforts in training would instantly be wasted. It was obvious that Mu Chen's schemes were completely powerless in face of such an existence. This difference was not something that schemes could help make up for. Thus, he could only angrily stare at the 9 Netherbird charging at his spiritual energy light wheel. "I'll go all out against you." In the final moments, Mu Chen let out a furious shout. He did not care and forced his spiritual energy light wheel to self-destruct. This was the only thing he could still do. Although he would pay a great price, it would still be better than the 9 Netherbird erasing his consciousness. The spiritual energy light wheel erupted out lights. This sort of spiritual energy had also suddenly become particularly violent. But just when it was the moment when Mu Chen was going to fight to the bitter end against the 9 Netherbird, a bell-like sound echoed within his Oracy. Under this strange sound, Mu Chen's rampaging spiritual energy light wheel that was about to explode actually calmed down a bit. Mu Chen watched this scene and stared at the surface of the spiritual energy light wheel. At that location, a page of black paper was quietly lying down. It seems that the sound was issued out from that place. This, Mu Chen wanted to cry, but tears did not flow out. After he obtained the mysterious black paper which he could not detect, it had always remained in his body. Never did it show any effects, but who would have expected that it would suppress the final ability that could take out the 9 Netherbirds' life in this critical moment. As the spiritual energy light wheel was suppressed, the black flames formed by the 9 Netherbird were close at hand. The black flames caused the spiritual energy light wheel within his Oracy to show signs of becoming distorted. "It's over." Seeing this scene, Mu Chen let out a sigh of despair. Dong! Just when the fierce black flames were about to smash into the spiritual energy light wheel, a black light screen descended down. Bang! The black flames that were almost always harmful were actually knocked back. Then, a hint of surprise appeared in the 9 Netherbirds' eyes within the black flames. Mu Chen was also stunned when he saw that scene. He hurriedly looked at the thin page of black paper. This was because a thin layer of a black light barrier descended down from it. Buzz! A strange sound that sounded like Sanskrit started to come out from the page of black paper. Then, dark purple lights emerged on the surface of the black paper that had always remained motionless. Swoosh! When these lights appeared, it actually formed into a dark purple light barrier and enveloped the black flames formed by the 9 Netherbird within it. This unforeseeable development surprised the 9 Netherbird. It hurriedly charged at the light barrier. But what shocked Mu Chen was that the light barrier was completely unmoving against the 9 Netherbirds' charge. It was not the end after the light barrier was formed. A purple light started to gather beneath the 9 Netherbird and gradually extended outwards. It actually turned into purple mandala flowers. Obscure, dark gold engravings seemed to be covered on the mandala's flower petals. A hint of horror instantly appeared within the 9 Netherbirds' eyes when it saw the mandala flower, and it let out a frightened cry. The mysterious dark purple mandala flower was like a cage and it bounded the black flames formed by the 9 Netherbird. Then, it slowly drifted away and landed on top of the thin black paper. A mysterious flower cage completely trapped the 9 Netherbird within it. As the 9 Netherbird became trapped, the rampage within Mu Chen's aura sea gradually subsided. The black flames also began to fade and it turned into a baby fist-sized mini 9 Netherbird. It struggled angrily, but it could not escape the dark purple mandala flower. Therefore, it could only stop and close its fierce and hateful eyes as it prepared to gather strength for an opportunity. Mu Chen was completely stunned as he watched this strange battle within his aura sea. Only after a while did he finally recover from his shock. Then, he stared blankly at the dark purple mandala flower on top of the page of black paper. It was resolved like this. Chapter 68 Spiritual Flame Array. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 68 Spiritual Flame Array. When Mu Chen woke up in the morning, his mind was still somewhat confused. If it wasn't for the black paper's purple mandala flower within his aura sea and the trapped 9 Netherbird, he would have thought that what had happened last night was all a dream. Damn beast! Mu Chen gradually accepted the situation after a long time. He fiercely rubbed his face and cursed furiously. Although the 9 Netherbird was caged by the mysterious black paper, he still felt uneasy. After all, the 9 Netherbird was too powerful. It may be extremely weak right now, but what would he do if the mysterious black paper could not stop it after the 9 Netherbird had recovered its strength in the future? This thing that was left within his body was like an unstable bomb. It could turn him completely helpless at any time. Only after he had tasted the fierceness and ruthlessness of the 9 Netherbird was Mu Chen aware of how naive he was of hoping to ingest it. With the 9 Netherbirds' pride, Mu Chen could guarantee that this damn beast would fight to the bitter end if anyone attempts to forcibly ingest it. What's the point of holding this sort of spiritual beast's soul essence? Mu Chen eventually calmed down after furiously scolding the 9 Netherbird deep down inside. The situation has already happened, no matter how much he vents it out, he can't change anything. Fortunately for him, the 9 Netherbird was currently trapped by the black paper, so he had some time to think of a way to deal with the 9 Netherbird. He got up from his bed and slightly organized himself before leaving the room. Then, he walked to the place where he would learn about spiritual arrays from Mr. Wenling. After the Black Eerie Swamp trip, Mu Chen had understood how amazing spiritual arrays are and his interest in it increased significantly. Moreover, the ones that he was able to arrange were only tiny spiritual arrays, they weren't even considered rank 1 spiritual arrays. In the training room that he would usually practice in, Mu Chen did not see Mr. Wenling. Presumably, he had arrived too earlier. However, he was not impatient and sat down cross-legged on the cushions. He then revealed a pondering expression. Right now, he had officially advanced to the spiritual rotation stage and could feel that the spiritual energy density within his body had increased significantly. Furthermore, he had become more proficient in his control over spiritual energy. I wonder how many spiritual seals I would be able to condense. Mu Chen muttered to himself as a hint of expectation flashed through his eyes. He immediately stretched out his palm and his palm spun. Dark black spiritual energy gushed out from it and surrounded his palm completely. Mu Chen was completely satisfied about the speed and the density of the spiritual energy. As expected from the spiritual rotation stage, the efficiency of mobilizing spiritual energy greatly surpassed the spiritual movement stage. The dark black spiritual energy on Mu Chen's fingertips quickly gathered and changed. 8 spiritual seals seemed to be condensed in succession at a fast pace. Then, a 9 spiritual seal quietly condensed when Mu Chen moved his fingertips. Mu Chen stared at the 9 spiritual seal, but he did not stop at this. The dark black spiritual energy continued to condense and a 10, 11 spiritual seal flashed. In the end, the amount of spiritual seals stopped at the 12 seal. Mu Chen watched the 12 spiritual seals on his palm. He was just barely satisfied with this result as he could feel that this wasn't the limit for him. However, he had just advanced to the spiritual rotation stage and required a little bit of time to stabilize. When that happens, he believed that he would be able to do better. Mu Chen smiled for himself when he saw his own progress. He clenched his hand and the 12 spiritual seals vanished. Afterwards, sounds of footsteps could be heard outside the door. Then, the door was pushed open and Wenling entered. Mr. Wen. Seeing this, Mu Chen hurriedly got up and greeted Wenling. Wenling gestured with his hand and stared at the boy in front of him. A smile was plastered on his strict face as he said, "I heard from the Territory Lord that you used tiny spiritual arrays at the Black Eyrie Swamp. You've learned quickly." Wenling was asked by Mu Feng to teach Mu Chen about spiritual arrays and the latter was able to quickly enter the doorway for spiritual arrays. This gave him quite a bit of face. However, he must admit that the majority of it was because Mu Chen had quite the talent in the aspects of spiritual arrays. Mu Chen smiled embarrassedly. The tiny spiritual arrays that he used could only trick spiritual beasts with low intelligence. You probably have to practice by yourself for the next 2 days. Wenling looked at Mu Chen and said, "Your father is planning to construct a rank 2 spirit convergence array within the Mu city. This level of spirit convergence array isn't something that I could arrange by myself. Therefore, your father paid a great price to invite 3 other rank 1 spiritual array masters to help. During this period of time, I would have to work together with them to see if it will work out." A rank 2 spirit convergence array. Mu Chen was slightly surprised. In the entire Northern Spiritual Realm, the only rank 3 spirit convergence array was in the Northern Spiritual Academy. As for a rank 2 spirit convergence array, only the Lu territory had it. Even the Mu territory only had a rank 1 spirit convergence array. This must be what his dad has been brooding about. After all, a spirit convergence array is a symbol to show how powerful a force is. For the Lu territory to be able to become the strongest territory out of the 9 territories, the rank 2 spirit convergence array had to play a part in it. However, a rank 2 spirit convergence array wasn't something that could be easily constructed. Even for a few rank 2 spiritual array masters, they would not be confident that they could arrange it. Moreover, constructing a spirit convergence array requires a large amount of rare materials. Thus, it was extremely costly. It would be a heavy blow to the Mu territory if it were to fail. This is why Mu Feng did not recklessly attempt it and endured it all these years. From the looks of it, his dad finally couldn't endure it any longer. But even if they invited another 3 rank 1 spiritual array masters to work together with Wenling, it was still hard to say if they would succeed on arranging the rank 2 spirit convergence array. "Yes, Mr. Wen. If you're busy, it's fine if you focus on your affairs." Mu Chen nodded his head. Wenling gave a nod. It seems that he was quite hard pressed because of the rank 2 spirit convergence array. He did not plan on saying anything more and intended to leave as he turned away. "About that, Mr. Wen." Mu Chen suddenly spoke up. He looked at Wenling, who was puzzled, and hesitated before saying, "I think I have some understanding about the tiny spiritual arrays now. I wonder if Mr. Wen could give me a scroll of a rank 1 diagram array so I can study it." After hearing that Mu Chen wanted to study a rank 1 diagram array, Wenling frowned. His face became serious again. "It's good that you have talent, but did you forget the words of how I told you not to be arrogant? A rank 1 spiritual arrays requires at least 15 spiritual seals. The complexity of it also far surpasses a tiny spiritual array. If you would like to study on a rank 1 diagram array, then you should wait until you formed 10 spiritual seals." Before he even finishing speaking, he suddenly paused. Surprise emerged on his strict face because he saw the boy lifting up his palm. Then, the required 10 spiritual seals he mentioned emerged on his fingertips. Wenling was stunned as he stared at the 10 spiritual seals on Mu Chen's fingertips. He only recovered from his shock after a while before staring strangely at Mu Chen. Just for how long did this guy come in contact with spiritual array cultivation? He could actually already form 10 spiritual seals. Isn't the talent he displayed in this area too terrifying? Cough. Wen Ling let out a dry cough and concealed the shock on his face as he said. Since you've already reached it, then I'll allow it. While he said this, he pulled out a red diagram array from within his arms and handed it over to Mu Chen. This scroll is a rather simple rank 1 spiritual array. Its name is the Spiritual Flame Array. This spiritual array requires at least 15 spiritual seals in order to arrange it. It's fine if you're going to study about it, but do not attempt to arrange it. Otherwise, it would not be fun if the spiritual array backfires on you. Mu Chen nodded as he excitedly accepted the red diagram array. Seeing this, Wen Ling let go of his hand and immediately left. He still had to discuss with the other 3 spiritual array masters that were invited regarding about how they should construct the rank 2 spiritual array. This was a hassle. However, it might be a good opportunity for him. He might be able to find a catalyst which would improve himself, and allow him to advance to a rank 2 spiritual array master. Seeing Wen Ling depart, Mu Chen carefully opened up the scroll for the rank 1 spiritual array. Then, a red light flashed as a faint heat emerged. Mu Chen focused his mind and concentrated his eyes on it. Red lights were flashing on the diagram array. Light beams would extend out and intertwine with each other and form a rather complex outline. Mu Chen could not help but smack his lips as he stared at the diagram array, which would make ordinary people dizzy. The rank 1 spiritual array was indeed a lot more complex than a tiny spiritual array. However, it made him even more interested. Mu Chen was immersed in the spiritual flame array and studied the complex spiritual beams outlined within it. Only after a while, he slowly retracted his gaze. Although he was quite eager to test it out, he would not attempt it recklessly. After all, this rank 1 spiritual array requires at least 15 spiritual seals and it was evident that he had not reached the level right now. It seems that I should properly condense for a while. Mu Chen was content as he put away the diagram array. Then, he closed his eyes and attempted to condense more spiritual seals. During the next few days, Wen Ling was busy with the matter of constructing a rank 2 spirit convergence array. He did not have much time to teach Mu Chen and the latter was happily at leisure. He would spend the entire time attempting to condense spiritual seals. His efforts brought a great effect. As Mu Chen had gradually adapted to the spiritual rotation stage, his control over his spiritual energy had become more proficient. Thus, on the 5th day, he had successfully increased the amount of spiritual seals to 15. After the amount of spiritual seals had reached 15, Mu Chen could not conceal the excitement within his heart. Then, the excited youth brought out the spiritual flame array once again. Right now, he had finally become qualified to attempt a true rank 1 spiritual array. Chapter 69 Rank 2 Spirit Convergence Array. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 69 Rank 2 Spirit Convergence Array. In the courtyard of the Mu estate, Mu Chen was standing straight as excitement surged through his eyes. After many days of training, he had finally condensed 15 spiritual seals. This also reached the basic requirements for the spiritual flame array. And he was also finally able to test just how powerful a rank 1 spiritual array was. Mu Chen's palm opened up and dark black spiritual energy flashed before it turned into shining, black spiritual seals. He manipulated the spiritual seals and channeled them to enter the air. Then, the spiritual seals seemed to have vanished like raindrops falling in the ocean. The only thing that others could perceive was a strange, rippling fluctuation. The complexity of arranging a rank 1 spiritual array was far beyond a tiny spiritual array. Although Mu Chen had constantly studied the diagram array of the spiritual flame array over the past few days, it was still the first time attempting it for him. Thus, he was still quite not used to it. Sweat had emerged on his forehead as he channeled the 15 spiritual seals into the air. Buzz! The 15 spiritual seals fused into the air and formed spiritual energy lights which were hard to see with the naked eye. Then, Mu Chen controlled his thoughts and manipulated the spiritual energy lights to extend into light beams. In the end, the light beams were intertwined with each other. The diagram array was rather complex, so Mu Chen was quite busy. Arranging the complicated diagram array requires fine control, and a single mistake would lead to failure. It was evident that a rank 1 spiritual array was not that easy to arrange. Although Mu Chen was quite talented in that area, he was not able to accomplish it in one attempt. Thus, when the light beams for the diagram array extended to a complicated step, he finally made a mistake. A spiritual energy light beam had extended to the wrong location. The instant that the spiritual energy light beam's position was off, Mu Chen secretly shouted out sh*T. Then, he saw the air in front of him emitting out a violent spiritual energy fluctuation. A fiery red color surged out from that location, and one could faintly see the unfinished shape of the spiritual array. Boom! The violent fiery red spiritual energy directly bombarded on Mu Chen's body, and a deep sound rang out. It made Mu Chen fly back dozens of meters, and his depressed appearance made him seem like he was quite awkward. Afterwards, Mu Chen climbed up from the ground. Luckily, he did not suffer any major injuries. He patted his body casually and pondered for a while as he thought back to the area where he had failed. Lights constantly flashed within his black eyes. Mu Chen's first attempt on arranging a rank 1 spiritual array had ended with failure. However, he did not give up. Instead, it aroused his stubbornness, and he started attempting it again after a brief rest. But the result? Boom! Boom! In the courtyard, muffled sounds rang out endlessly through the afternoon. At that location, a youthful figure was endlessly being blown away. The patrolling guards looked at each other when they heard the sounds, but they did not dare to disturb Mu Chen's training. Mu Chen, who was quite awkward, finally stopped his training when night was approaching. He had spent an entire afternoon in failure. However, this did not take a blow to his confidence. This is because he had overcome the part where he had failed, and every time he failed. Based on this speed, he would soon be able to arrange the spiritual flame array. As he thought about this, Mu Chen let out a grin and clapped his hands. Then he turned around and left. For the next 3 days, Mu Chen had placed almost all his energy on the spiritual flame array. He would attempt it over and over again in the courtyard, yet he would fail every single time. Sometimes, the patrolling guards within the estate would feel surprised when they noticed Mu Chen crawling up from the ground helplessly. They did not know what Mu Chen was practicing in, but his attitude of climbing up and ignoring all those failures made them admire his perseverance and insistence. The little lord is quite diligent. It seems that there is a successor for the Mu territory in the future. The guards thought this as they walked lightly. They did not want to disturb the boy who was training in the courtyard. Mu Chen's failures continued to persist. This continued until the 3 days evening before there was a slight change. The boy in the courtyard was completely awkward again, only his eyes were still flashing. At this moment, he had a serious expression, and 15 spiritual seals danced around his fingertips. They immediately integrated into the air and brought out a spiritual energy fluctuation. Compared to the past few days, Mu Chen's technique had greatly improved. It seems that the failures he had experienced allowed him to progress significantly. As the fluctuations occurred in the air, the spiritual aura within the world also flew quickly over. A red light suddenly emerged in front of Mu Chen, and a complicated red light array gradually emerged. Within the fiery red light array, lights surged like a flame traveling back and forth. It looked exceptionally majestic. Mu Chen stared at the finally completed spiritual flame array, and delight poured out from his eyes. He had finally succeeded after many failures. Although the spiritual flame array still showed some signs of instability at the moment, this was still a successful arrangement made by Mu Chen. Go! Mu Chen suppressed the joy within his heart and his fingers moved. Two of his fingers weren't bent and pointed at a giant boulder that was like a mountain in the courtyard. Buzz! A fiery light suddenly emerged on the spiritual flame array. Then, a red flame light pillar erupted out like a volcano. It shot off fiercely from the spiritual array and bombarded the giant boulder. Bang! The earth seemed to tremble at this moment. The giant boulder that was like a mini-dot-sized room instantly shattered and gravel exploded out. It made the courtyard into a big mess. What an amazing power! Surprise filled Mu Chen's face as he witnessed the power of the spiritual flame array. This power was probably something that even a spiritual rotation stage middle phase powerhouse would find hard to endure. A rank 1 spiritual array truly deserves its reputation. However, the consumption was quite high for him as well. Little Lord! The guards outside of the courtyard also heard the commotion and hurriedly rushed in. They stared at the mess on the ground and were stunned. Originally, they thought that Mu Chen had suffered an enemy attack and quickly rushed over. It's fine. I did this all by myself. Mu Chen smiled and waved his hand. He stared at the awkward appearance he had and smiled helplessly. Then, he turned around and entered the house to clean himself up while the guards exchanged gazes with each other. When did the little lord become so powerful? He actually destroyed a mountain-like boulder. Not even their captain, who had reached the spiritual rotation stage, could do it. After Mu Chen cleaned himself up, he walked out of the room and slipped away as he noticed the guards cleaning up the courtyard. He was quite exhausted after studying the spiritual flame array overnight for a couple of days. Mu Chen strolled down the Mu estate leisurely and walked near the meeting room. Then, he noticed lights within it. It was already this late, yet his dad was still discussing about some affairs. Mu Chen thought for a moment and walked over. He immediately heard a loud sound coming from the meeting room. The sound was quite familiar as it was the sound of Mu Feng smacking the table in fury. His dad hasn't been so furious in a long time. What had happened? Mu Chen hesitated for a moment before straining his ears to listen. Within the meeting room, Mu Feng's face was dark with rage. The table in front of him was smashed to pieces by him. He stood up and angrily shouted. Those Lu territories as asterisk holes. They really like obstructing us secretly. Beside him, Zhou Yi also had a gloomy expression and immediately exclaimed. Those bastards. They spent a great deal of money purchasing the materials and restraining many spiritual array masters when they heard that we were going to construct a rank 2 spirit convergence array. With the remaining materials we have left, we cannot fail again. Mu Feng clenched his fist tightly and looked at the other 4 figures in the room. One of the people in the room was Wen Ling. As for the others, they were all middle-aged individuals. They must be the other 3 rank 1 spiritual array masters that Mu Feng had invited over. Mr. Wen Ling, what other difficulties are we facing now in order to construct a rank 2 spirit convergence array? Mu Feng lowered his voice and asked slowly. Wen Ling sighed and said. Territory Lord. We have already attempted once over the past few days. However, it ended in failure and we wasted a lot of materials. Based on our conjecture, we probably require another rank 1 spiritual array master to help us. Zhou Yi frowned and said. We have basically invited all the spiritual array masters within the Mu territory. With the Lu territory's obstruction, it would probably be difficult to find another rank 1 spiritual array master. Wen Ling let out a bitter laugh. He also knew that it was troublesome, but there was no other way. They had tried it before and knew that it was not possible with just the 4 of them. Zhou Yi. Mu Feng's eyes flashed and immediately waved his hand as he said. Send the word out to the spiritual array masters which the Lu territory had drawn away that the Mu territory will double whatever the Lu territory had promised them as long as they help the Mu territory. Zhou Yi was shocked. This means that they would have to pay a great price. Moreover, these words mean that the cunning spiritual array masters would probably take the opportunity to squeeze every last bit out from them. If that's the case, it would be unfair to the other three spiritual array masters in front of them. It would easily show that they were being unfair. Thinking about this, he glanced at the other three spiritual array masters. As expected, they were somewhat unnatural. The territory lord should not say these words out in anger. This might cause us to crumble down instead. Wen Ling said with a wry smile. At this moment, Mu Feng seemed to have woken up. He first cupped his fists to the other three spiritual array masters before sitting back down as he gritted his teeth with a gloomy expression. Right now, news about the Mu territory wanting to construct a rank 2 spirit convergence array has spread out. If they were not able to accomplish it, they would become a joke. Silence filled the meeting room again and the atmosphere was quite depressing. Creak. Just when everybody was silent, the tightly closed door was suddenly pushed open. Mu Feng frowned and was about to shout. However, he immediately swallowed it back down when he saw Mu Chen's figure. Mu Chen smiled at Mu Feng and then turned around to Wen Ling as he said. Mr. Wen, I see that you're missing a spiritual array master. Would it be fine if I were to take that spot? Chapter 70 Participation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 70 Participation. The atmosphere within the meeting room seemed to have slightly frozen due to Mu Chen's sentence. Then, Mu Feng and the others directed their surprised eyes at Mu Chen. What madness are you saying? Mu Feng scolded him as he frowned. Wen Ling also frowned. Constructing a rank 2 spirit convergence array was a rather troublesome matter. Only a rank 1 spiritual array master would be able to help. Although Mu Chen had quite the talent in the area of spiritual arrays, he had only just started. How could he withstand such responsibilities? Oh ho ho, constructing a rank 2 spirit convergence array isn't something that you could casually participate in. Otherwise, if an accident was to occur, the loss of the materials would be a serious blow to the Mu territory. A middle-aged man with thick eyebrows smiled faintly. It was evident that he treated Mu Chen's words as a boy acting arrogant. The other two rank 1 spiritual array masters also nodded their heads. If a brat was able to participate in this, then why would they need them? Mr. Wen, if you're able to arrange a rank 1 spiritual array, would you be barely considered as a rank 1 spiritual array master? Mu Chen ignored them and asked Wen Ling with a smile. Wen Ling hesitated and said. In a broad sense, that is true. I have already successfully arranged the rank 1 spiritual array, spiritual flame array, that you have handed over to me. Mu Chen said. Wen Ling's voice suddenly stopped. He paused for half a second before immediately shouting out. How is that possible? You can arrange the spiritual flame array. The other three rank 1 spiritual array masters stared at Mu Chen in disbelief. They could not believe that a young boy would have reached the same level as them. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi also stared at Mu Chen with surprised expressions. However, the two of them knew Mu Chen pretty well. Mu Chen would not randomly spout nonsense in front of them. If he says that he could arrange the spiritual flame array, there was a certain degree of truth to it. You. Wen Ling also recovered from the shock and stared doubtfully at Mu Chen as if he still did not believe him. If that's the case, then try arranging it out in front of us. Mu Chen could not help but nod. He gripped his hand and dark black spiritual energy condensed. Then, 15 black spiritual seals flashed as it was formed. He's actually able to form 15 spiritual seals. The three rank 1 spiritual array masters' faces turned serious when they saw this. The amount of spiritual seals that they were able to condense were only 17. And now, a boy, who was only in his teens, had already almost caught up to them. Just how frightening was his talent regarding spiritual arrays. Wen Ling's mouth could not help but twitch when he saw the 15 spiritual seals. However, he did not say anything. He had already believed Mu Chen's words within his heart. Mu Chen's face turned serious and he flicked his 10 fingers. The 15 spiritual seals shot off into the air and integrated into the air. Then, his hands were rapidly changing seals. Buzz. As Mu Chen's seals changed, everybody at the scene could feel the temperature in the room rapidly increasing. The spiritual energy within the world was rapidly gathering in the air in front of them. Everybody at the scene were all individuals with keen perception. Thus, they could vaguely see the quickly forming complex light diagram within the air. A light of fire surged through the array. The time slowly passed. After a while, Mu Chen finally stopped his hands from changing. In the air in front of them, a fiery red spiritual array gradually emerged as it enveloped half the meeting room. This. Wenling had a complicated expression as he stared at the formed spiritual array. He could not help but sigh as he said, "This is definitely the spiritual flame array." The other 3 rank 1 spiritual array masters beside him exchanged gazes. They immediately let out a bitter laugh. A boy, who was in his teens, was a rank 1 spiritual array master. It was the first time they saw it in their lives. Just what kind of freak is the Mu territory's little lord? Mu Feng and Zhou Ye's eyes were filled with joy. Mu Feng stood up and patted Mu Chen's shoulder as he said with a smile, "Attaboy, it seems that you've really inherited your mother's talent in this. Don't just ignore my efforts in it, okay?" Mu Chen said helplessly. If he did not spend a week fully immersed in studying the spiritual flame array and crawled up after experiencing many failures, how could he have succeeded? Mu Feng smiled as he nodded his head. He could not conceal the pride and content within his eyes. The anger he had towards the Lu territory for obstructing him had completely vanished at this moment. "Mr. Wen, what do you think about Mu Chen? Would he be able to help?" Mu Feng looked at Wenling and asked. Wenling pondered for a moment and said, "It's true that Mu Chen is able to condense the spiritual flame array. However, he had only just started out and cannot be considered as a true rank 1 spiritual array master. After all, he still needs to hone his experience and eyesight." Mu Feng glanced at Mu Chen and also nodded his head. Indeed, no matter how talented Mu Chen was in this area, experience wasn't something which would come to him for no reason. Mu Chen's face turned a little sour. "Oh ho ho, but experience comes from slowly accumulating it. Constructing a rank 2 spirit convergence array might be a great opportunity for him. Right now, he can barely be qualified to participate in it." Wenling stared at Mu Chen, who was bitter, and smiled. Then, the tone of his voice changed. Surprise quickly poured out from Mu Chen's eyes. He smiled and said, "Then, thank you, Mr. Wen." Wenling waved his hand. The eyes that stared at Mu Chen were filled with a surprisingly gentle light. Even he could not help but show some love towards such a talented boy. However, he also quickly understood that he probably wouldn't be able to give much guidance to Mu Chen due to his talent. This is because it was a simple matter for the latter to surpass him. The other 3 rank 1 spiritual array masters did not refuse after hearing this. It was obvious that they were shaken by Mu Chen's earlier performance. According to Wenling, Mu Chen had not yet been exposed to spiritual arrays for a month, yet his abilities were about to catch up to them. Perhaps this boy would soon become the most powerful spiritual array master within the northern spiritual realm. I will take Mu Chen with me tomorrow to the Spirit Convergence Array's location. We will let him get familiar to it and attempt it after a couple of days. How about that? Wenling looked at Mu Feng and asked. Okay. Mu Feng did not object. As long as Mu Chen was able to improve his understanding on spiritual arrays, he would not feel pain even if Mu Chen was to waste all the materials that they gathered. Since they had already made their decision, Wenling and the others talked about the details with Mu Feng before taking their leave. Boy, you should follow Mr. Wenling tomorrow and learn properly. Don't just be satisfied with your talent. Cultivation in spiritual arrays isn't something that you can go far on with just talent. Mu Feng watched Wen Ling and the others depart before turning around to talk with Mu Qin. No matter what, you must not be ordinary in spiritual array cultivation even if you are ordinary in spiritual energy cultivation. Otherwise, you will disgrace your mother. Mu Qin rolled his eyes and could not help but ask. Mother is really such an amazing spiritual array master. Your mother's achievement in spiritual arrays could be said to be unmatched within the northern spiritual realm. Probably even in the 5 great academies, nobody will be able to compare with her. Mu Feng said with a faint smile. She was that amazing. Mu Chen was slightly stunned. He could endure it if it was the spiritual array masters within the northern spiritual realm. But what sort of place are the 5 great academies? In that place, the strongest spiritual array masters could probably annihilate a spirit stage powerhouse on a whim. Her mother was actually that amazing. But if mother is that amazing, Dad, don't you feel a lot of pressure? Mu Chen suddenly glanced at Mu Feng and joked around. When I first met your mother, her strength was somehow sealed to an incredibly low level. At that time, I treated her as a common, weak woman and protected her on the way. In the end, I nearly died. Mu Feng smiled. Then, he revealed some pride in his eyes and said. Who would have imagined that she would become that powerful? However, your mother is very gentle, so why would I feel any pressure? So you took advantage of her when she was in a perilous state. When mother had her strength sealed, it must be when she had her guard down the most. Otherwise, why would she fancy you, Dad? Mu Qin said as he understood the situation. Damn brat, you're looking for a spanking. Mu Feng finally turned the shame into anger and pretending to hit Mu Qin. However, Mu Qin laughed as he scurried away while leaving behind a dumbfounded Mu Feng. That boy. Mu Feng put his fists away and immediately let out a pleased smile as he muttered. Jing, our son is becoming more and more amazing. I think that he might be able to surpass you in the future. When that happens, it will be the time when our family reunites. After talking up to this point, he seemed to have remembered something and darkness flushed through his eyes. He clenched his hands tightly and his drooping face was quite dark. You can look down on me. I don't care. It's true that I do not have the ability, but I still have my son. On the following day, when morning had just arrived, Mu Chen had already exited his room. Outside of the meeting room, he saw Mu Feng, Wen Ling and the others, who had already been waiting for him. Let's go. Mu Feng showed a faint smile when he saw Mu Chen arriving. He took the lead and charged out of the Mu estate to the northern part of Mu City. At that location, there was a vast square. It was the place where Mu territory's guards would train daily. If they were able to arrange a rank 2 spirit convergence array at this place, it would increase the attractiveness of the Mu territory to a few powerhouses. After all, a spirit convergence array would bring great benefits to cultivation. Right now, the square had already been isolated by the Mu territory's guard. Mu Feng and the others entered the square and stopped their footsteps. Then, they stared heatedly in front.